Hello everyone, it's Shel C from PaperOcotilloStudio, and today I am sharing this gel printing video, pretty much sped up 4 times fast, unedited, to go in coordination with my StencilGirl design team video that came out at the same time. I know some of you on my channel here like to watch me gel print, and so I didn't show all the gel printing in the other video because I only showed a few of the pieces that I made, and then I used them in a art journal page, and so I didn't want to show this whole long thing, but I did spend, oh, I don't know, a couple hours gel printing with these new StencilGirl stencils that I got. And it was fun and enjoyable. And so I just wanted to give those of you who like to watch this type of thing an opportunity to watch the entire thing. So that's why I'm doing it. This first one is the tropical floral stencil, and I laid the stencil onto the plate. This is my 8x10. I've got my 8x10 and my 6x6. I'm using the 6x6 for some prints as well as paint cleanup and a palette. I do use that paint that's on there. I don't waste it. I try not to waste anything. You know me, I hoard everything. I've got pieces and parts of every piece of painted paper and colored paper and printed paper that I've ever seen in my life. I have them all still hoarded. So this I was making a multicolored print with this one. So I laid the stencil down, and then I used my 2-inch brayer and also a sponge to make a lot of different colors through the stencil onto the plate. And then I let that one dry for a little bit until it was, not so wet that it would pick up the paint as I put on a second layer. I also used all this paint on my 6x6, and the piece that I ended up making with this paper, you'll see it coming in the screen several times. I kept putting more cleanup paint on it, and I actually love that piece of scrapbook paper. Or it's not scrapbook, scrap paper. It's awesome. It has all the colors on it in kind of a blocky grid type of a way, and you'll see it as it comes through. Um, I will use it for something sometime. It's so beautiful. I'm kind of like hoarding it at the moment. I just kind of want to look at it. I don't really want to use it. But I then, after that was fairly dry, I put a very thin layer of unbleached titanium over it. I have this new pack of rice paper that is kind of it's kind of like deli paper, but with a different finish on it, and I wanted to try it in my collages. And so I was doing some of my printing onto rice paper, some of it onto regular printer paper, just, cheap printer paper. Yeah, I think the rice paper is pretty cool. I think I have to use it a lot more before I really give it a 100% thumbs up. It did bubble on my background, but that might have been my own fault for not doing a very good job of gluing it down. When I did cut apart this deconstructed chrysanthemum, it's a mask and a stencil, and I needed to cut it apart. Peg had suggested that you make a black line through the stencil, and then that way you will be able to match it up again at a later date. But I didn't have a Sharpie, and so I tried doing a China marker, and it didn't really work. So I wouldn't really recommend that. But it's really cool to have both the mask and the stencil, and you'll see me using it in the other video. You'll see how I use them together on the page if you watch that other one. 2 videos. This one's just a bonus. So then I also used the stencil. I turned it upside down onto the plate. I don't know if it's this time or if it's a different time, but the excess paint on the stencil does something interesting by leaving a little mark, almost like stamping onto the other plate when you flip it over. So that's a good way to use up and kind of a little bit clean up your stencils, is to flip them over and put them in a different way on the plate. So lots of ways to use them and lots of fun. This tag, I mean, not tag. Yeah, it is a tag. I'm very tired this morning. It turned out really cool with that excess paint that had just been hanging out at the top. You know, I love crusty bits. I love picking up all that little unsuspecting, surprising stuff that's on the plate that gets left after a print. I just think it looks really great in the next print. And the more it builds up, the more excited I get. We've joked about that before here on my channel. Hashtag crusty bits. I just love them. So I made several different prints with the Deconstructed Chrysanthemum stencil from StencilGirl. I wasn't sure what color I wanted. I wasn't sure what I was going to do with it on the final project. So I did make several different colorways with it. That one's on the rice paper, the orange, and that one turned out really pretty. And I did end up using part of that one by cutting it apart. That one's a cleanup print on my 6x6 because there was a little bit of excess paint. And you can see how thin of a second layer of paint I'm putting on there. You don't want it thick. If it's too thick, it doesn't do what you want. And I think that a lot of people who have watched my videos, and this is how I print, get frustrated by that. There's two things that they get frustrated by. One, the wait time of allowing that paint, that first layer of paint, to dry. Because first of all, I speed up my videos, so that that confuses people. They think it's a lot faster than it is. Second, I live in Arizona and it's dry here. It's very dry here, so it doesn't take me as long to allow that paint to dry enough to pick it up with the second layer than it does for someone who lives in, say, Florida, where it's humid and it doesn't want to dry quickly. I mean, it could really take you a long time. So my style of printing might not be for everyone, but I sure love it. And I sure think everyone should try. And, the different types of paint, like if you use a craft paint that has a lot of fillers in it, that stuff will dry faster than if you use, say, a fluid paint. I use this kind of mid-range student grade heavier body paint. That's what I prefer, and I think it makes great prints, but for some people in a different climate, it might not be the same. So you just have to experiment. You have to try. You have to make sure that your layers are thin, that you're not putting too much paint on there. That's like the first thing that happens to everyone is they just slap on the paint there. That's the print I was talking about where I used some of the wet paint that was left on the stencil and I printed it upside down onto the other plate and then I picked it up. It's subtle, but it's really pretty. And I end up using it as a background for this word stencil, which is the Journal Words stencil, StencilGirl products. All these were designed by Tracy Bautista. She was the one who designed for StencilGirl these stencils, and these were the ones that Peg and I picked for this challenge of our design team for StencilGirl. Peg and I are paired up on this. We're doing it as a collaboration. So if you're wondering why you're seeing stuff on hers and stuff on mine and stuff together and stuff on the blog post, it's because we are collaborating as a team on the design team. And the way that we collaborated this time was to pick the same designer and the same stencils. And then we both did a project and then showed our projects as two different artists with the same stencils, collaborating in that way. So this time I put way too much blue paint on there. Way too much. It's globby, and that's the reason that I used the 6x6 to take up the excess paint. I wasn't intending to do a 6x6 and an 8x12, an 8x11, 8x10. Oh my gosh, I'm so tired. Yeah. I was just planning on making some prints with the journal words, but then a way to use up that excess paint is to put it on another plate. So having two different gel plates at the same time is a really useful thing to have. If you just happen to have two, you should get both of them out at the same time. Even if it's a small one and a big one, it doesn't matter. You know, I have even little teeny tiny ones, and they're all good. And with that roll off paper, I was just getting all the excess paint off before I pulled the stencil off, and now what's left on the plate is a layer of paint that was under the stencil. And then I'm using the stencil I'm just removing all the excess paint off the stencil onto the back of this piece of paper, just to get it off there. It wasn't intended to be a print because it's going to be backwards. So I don't need a backwards one. I need a forwards one. So then that excess paint ended up being super cool on this 6x6, and this is probably my favorite one of the prints that I made with the deconstructed chrysanthemum. It turned out really cool. And then I'm just putting a thin layer of paint over this one. Too much paint. You need to be able to see what's underneath it through the layer of paint. So you see that I used my roll-off paper to pull some of that excess paint off. I have these new tubes of paint from Hobby Lobby, their store brand. What is it? Artist Touch, Master's Touch, something like that. It's their store brand, and that they come out really fast out of the tubes, and so I tend to make kind of a mess with it. But yeah, it's all by feel. That's one of the pieces I end up using right there. So then I go back to the tropical floral larger stencil again and make some more prints, this time being less accurate about where I put the colors. This first one I'm doing kind of darker colors picked up by light paint, and then I do one that's lighter colors picked up by dark paint. They're opposites, and they both turn out really cool. I end up using both of them a little bit. There's a lot of paint left on that stencil, so I pressed it down onto the 6x6 and picked all that up later. I also used some scratch deli paper and picked that paint up off the stencil as well. And there's that one I'm talking about, that just bits and pieces one that has a lot of different paint on it from a lot of different times that I was printing, and it just turned out really cool. It's really cool. I don't know. I like weird stuff like that, random stuff. So this one, in the darker areas, I used a little bit lighter paint to pick it up, and in the lighter areas, I used the darker paint to pick it up. I don't know. I had to think about it a little bit, but it turned out cool. It's very beachy looking. This particular print is very beachy looking to me, like almost like it would be a curtain in a little funky beach house that's painted white on the outside with a surfboard next to the door, you know, that type of feel. But you can see how I work. I constantly work with two different plates, and that also helps with that drying time I was talking about. Doesn't that one look like it should be curtains or something? I thought it would turn out really cool. That one's really light, but that was just excess paint that was left on the plate that I picked up with another layer. This is just pure fun. I hope you guys are enjoying it. If you are, please remember to give it a thumbs up. Leave me a comment or question below if you have one about this style of printing. You can subscribe if you haven't already, people. And of course, you can pin this on Pinterest, share it on Facebook. All those things are very helpful for creators like me on YouTube who are providing the service for free. So it helps us if you can get more people to find us. The more people that find us, the better. So this one, I used a lot of really light colors through the stencil, and then I picked it up with darker paint. And it's, you know, the same process as the other one, but yet it looks completely different. Has a very different feel to it. So You never know what you're going to get when you're mono printing. I mean, you can kind of predict, sort of, but really every print is unique and it's going to be cool every time you pull it up. That's what's great about gel printing. It's just so random and so fun to just be surprised by what you get each time. It's what I love about it. And then, of course, I hoard all these and I make them into stuff with collage. So there can never be too many. Never ever be too many gel prints in the world. So let's see how this one is. I think this is the last one, maybe. And the roll-off paper's cool too. It's always turns out cool. Yeah, then I had that little excess bit I had to pick up. That's right, because it didn't come up. But it came up enough on the other paper. But yeah, that's it for me. Thanks for watching, guys. Be sure to go and watch the other video where I used these and made them into an art journal page. Bye-bye.